Are you just like a strict Thomist? You would just affirm Thomism blankly?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay. Have you read Aquinas specifically on the incarnation?
Um, yeah, I have read the third part of the Summa.
Okay. What do you think about, how about, this is a good discussion topic. What do you think about the composite hypostasis dogma?
It's true, and he says it's necessarily true. But like composites, as Damascus points out, is that it's like going to be twofold, either in the account of parts or in the account of simply two things, right, in one subsistence.
Mm. Um, from my memory, Damascene does say two parts.
Hmm.
Contra Jacobitis, chapter 71, and
Hmm.
Aquinas rejects two parts. So what would you say about that?
Maximus also says two parts, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, like I have like no problem with that. Like once again, it depends like what you mean by like two parts. Two parts insofar as two natures, sure, but two parts insofar as two things having a relation with each other, forming a third thing. That's what Aquinas would reject, because that's
Uh-huh.
like just like going to be in reference to the subsistence. But that can't be possible because it's simple.
Okay. Have you read John Baptiste Gonnet and his view on the composite hypostases?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I'll just stay
Yeah,
away from that.
okay.
Um, Damascene, let me just say this. Damascene on the Orthodox Faith, Book 3, I don't want to butcher it, but from memory, he says the hypostasis was previously simple and then became composite. So would you say there's a sense in which he remains simple? Because then what would be the point of saying he's previously simple?
Yeah. So it's in the mode of the union with the two natures. And so the massing there is like speaking on the account of not the union, not the person, but the human nature to which he assumed. And I
Okay.
think like St. Thomas actually says this in questions two in the third part, Article 4, I believe.
All right. I know Aquinas, he says the word in himself is simple, but he's
Mhm.
composite on account of the union of requirements, so the things necessary for salvation. What I would say is there's a dilemma I give to Chalcedonians, but I do have a dilemma. Either Chalcedonians affirm an actual intrinsic compositional change in God the Word, which many have affirmed to me. A bunch of Chalcedonian apologists have affirmed this to me. Or you just affirm a Theodorian Nestorian prosopicuni, meaning the composition is only in the supposit or in the name itself, not actually in an intrinsic composition. So which one would you
Can you
affirm?
define composition?
So composition in this case would be simply the dogma of anhypostatization, where the word and the flesh together bring about the composite hypostases, and he bears all of the properties of the two parts, not by
I
relation,
feel like
but
that's
as
an
a subject.
example. What's the definition of composition?
Oh,
It
you
has
want
to be
like,
a little bit less ambiguous, because like not all compositions result in homogeneity, as St. Thomas Aquinas points out.
correct.
And
Yeah.
so when you say like composed, is that like going to be on the account of number or in the account of like parts?
On account of parts.
Uh, in regards to the two natures?
Uh-huh. So a good way to like see where you fall is I like to ask this question. Did
Hmm.
God the Word suffer in himself or in relation to another object?
He
Typically, if you
suffered.
say in himself, if you say in himself, you take the more Eastern view, an actual composition. If you say in relation to another, you take the more classical position, affirmed by like Leo, for example.
Yep, that's the Tomistic position. That it's going to be in relation to the human nature.
Okay. Would you say this human nature has a mind?
Yeah, I would say as an intellect. Yeah,
And can this intellect form propositional statements?
yeah, it has discursive reasoning.
Perfect. Okay. Can this intellect affirm I am the Son of Man?
Yeah, of course.
Can it affirm I am the Son of God and eternal?
Yes.
So something which is, because you would affirm this intellect is created. When it says
Yeah.
I am uncreated, would it be by relation?
It's gonna be by relation. And so like what
Perfect.
St. Thomas is like going to say, and like the same thing with St. John Damascus, is that whenever like the Son of God makes like propositions, right? Like concrete propositions, in terms of like his divinity, like this just like follows out of the communicatio idiotum.
Mhm.
And so because it's by relation, it's like, and the intellect, it's
I get
still
you.
going to be
Yeah,
in reference to the subsistence and not to like another
I get
something
you.
created.
How about this? Let's make the distinction Theodore of Mopsuestia made. The things, properties or predicates, for example, the indexical, I am the Son of Man,
Okay.
they either belong by nature or by relation. Would you agree so far?
Yeah, and the relation is going to be in regards to the person.
Okay. Can the human mind say, by nature, I am the Son of God and eternal?
Can you define nature?
So according to like its actual predicates, it's making a truth claim about its ontology.
About his ontology?
Yeah. So the human mind is
Mhm.
making a truth claim, not about something it has in relation, but something it possesses in its humanity.
Something it
Could this
possesses in its
yeah,
humanity.
could it have the indexical, I am the Son of God and eternal in my nature?
Yeah, but that's like not going to be in reference to the humanity.
I know, I'm saying in reference to the humanity. So what he possesses naturally. Could he say, by nature, I am the Son of God and eternal, as the
By
Son of Man?
nature, is that just like in regards to the humanity or to like the
Yeah,
person?
the humanity.
Well, no, no, because the humanity in of itself per se is not ontologically the same as the divine nature.
Exactly. So I have no issue with affirming by relation. I see where you would get one person. This was Nestorius's logic. But you see here how, if it can affirm something by nature and negate something by nature, you would at least have two natural sons. You would have a natural son of God, a natural son of man, and they communicate their idioms by relation.
Okay, wait, how does that result in Nestorianism?
Well, when I say like Nestorianism, you've kind of already affirmed it. I'm not like pinning you like you have two persons. I'm just
Are you
referring
talking
to the
about
classic
Nestorius's
Antiochian view.
actual? Are you talking
Yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
Nestorius's actual position or his
Yes,
successors?
his actual position.
Okay, okay, okay.
So would you
So,
affirm there's two natural sons in this case?
no, there's not two natural sons because, like, what like Nestorius actually argued is that like he basically like keeps the natures like separate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to like the hypostatic union, and at least like in the Tomaleo and like the Tomistic, just like standard Tomistic position, it's like not going to be like the nature proclaiming like such proposition. It's going to be the person.
But then again, like even if I say it's the person, you still believe, according to Aquinas, the humanity is in atomo, or
Yeah.
rather, when it does have these indexical statements, you can still ascribe a certain human energy. So the humanity could still say, "I am the Son of Man by nature, and not the Son of God by nature."
So when you say I am the Son of God, or when you say he says that, that proposition, is the truth value going to be in reference to the ontological properties of
Yeah.
humanity or in regards to the divinity?
So in regards to the ontological properties of the humanity itself, which has that indexical.
Well, that indexical is proper to the subsistence, not to the humanity once again.
But once again, what is the metaphysical category of the subsistence? Because once again, you have two individual natures, or as Aquinas says, the humanity in atomo and then God the Word. The two unite in one sort of subsistence. What would you say the subsistence is? Is it another primary substance? Because you would reject a third thing.
Well, it depends what you mean by primary substance, because like I won't like necessarily say, and same thing with the Aquinas, that it depends how you like interpret primary substance. Because when it comes to like the Aristotelian categories and like the five predicamentals, right, and substance being divided into primary and secondary, you must like be very careful not to attribute quote unquote substance to God, because he's
I'm not applying it to God. It's more of because you're applying a sort of improper composition here, where the humanity and the divinity, they don't really do things in their own spheres. They're rather all predicated to the one subsistence. So
Well,
typically,
what do you mean by primary substance? Because
so,
primary substance is just like going to be a particular.
so a whole which is of the same category of the divinity and humanity, something individual.
Something individual. So just like yeah, so like based off of like the Boethian like position of like individuals subsistence of rational nature. And so like when it comes like to him like making like propositions, he can say, right, in his humanity that he is the Son of God, right, due to the communication of idioms. But
my point is, I can understand how you're predicating back to the subsistence. I'm trying to like understand your view. What exactly is this one subsistence? When you speak of this one Christ, is it an individual that's of the same category as the two elements, or is it rather just a place where the union occurs, just a collection of names, a homonym?
Can you restate that? Sorry.
So there would be two types of unity here. What the Ephesian fathers would call a substantial unity. So the hypostases of the individual reality of the humanity and divinity become one individual reality, or what the Antiochian school thought of as a homonymous union. So they would believe in one subsistence out of two natures, and this one subsistence is just like a collection of names. So what would you believe that one subsistence is?
Like we believe in like the ones, like at least like in the Tomistic position, like it's been substantial.
Oh, substantial. So there's a sense in which
nature. That's then one nature. Yeah, that's one nature.
In a sense, that would be one substance out of two like categories.
Yeah, like I don't like negate like your guys' position. It just like really matters like how you like interpret it.
So that's fine.
You've anathematized that. You've anathematized that because you say that there are two substances after the union. You've now reverted to monophysitism. But go ahead, Agen.
Wait. So firstly, when it comes down to like Metaphysicism, you must like have like at least like within like the Catholic position and like according to the popes, like the interpretation like varies amongst like the Catholics.
That's fine.
So,
but
if you mean like one nature post incarnation insofar as like one person, we would like agree.
We've always affirmed it that way. It's a substantial oneness out of two.
Exactly.
But how about this? That's fine. But what you did tell me...
Agent, sorry, can I say something, or you want to go ahead?
Go ahead, of course. Go ahead.
Okay. So if they're going to affirm that, right, the substantial union, right, where there's one nature, one person, you're going to then have to affirm meathelitism and meaenergism, right? But go ahead, Agent.
I don't want to get into that, but you're absolutely right, Fnatic. You're absolutely right. But I don't want to get into that because I want to tackle this. That type of union you affirmed, it's foreign to Tomistic thought until at least John Baptiste Gonet. He was actually the first to say what you just said, and he did apply this certain type of composition. Aquinas' union is more similar to the other option I gave, a homonymous collection of properties. He even says in one of his works that the Word made an agreement with the man. And he's
the way I interpreted you is just like when you say like substantial, it's like the union's not accidental. It's just there's a substantial union between God and man.
Obviously, like the term accidental, you're going to obviously steer away from that. But that's not the classical Thomistic thought. Like I agree that it has to be a substantial union, but I'm trying to make you sort of see that's not what Aquinas had in thought. He had in thought more of this one subsistence as a collection of names.
So let me just like bring up like what Aquinas says, because once again, when I say like substantial, I'm just like referring to the union not being accidental.
But that's still resulting in one substance ultimately.
But
if the union is of two substances and the product is substantial, it's one.
You said that this wasn't like the Thomistic position, but in the third part in questions 2, he speaks of the union being substantial. And yeah, it's going to be like a collection of terms to which we could reference to the hypostasis. But like I'm talking about the union itself.
Yeah, I'm aware Aquinas does apply the term substantial, but I'm more speaking so of the metaphysical product, if it's substantial. So a similar sort of like a good example for this is even Nestorius said the union was hypostatic. He didn't believe that there was one hypostasis resulting. He just believes that because the union occurred of two hypostases, you could call it hypostatic union. The same applies for Aquinas. My question wasn't aimed more at what united. My question is aimed as the product of the union, the one subsistence. Mm-hmm. Is it merely a set of homonym, or is it one substance?
Yeah, then if you're just like referring to like, like the in the metaphysical sense and like not strictly the union, then I would reject it to being like merely substantial, because I thought you just like meant if like the union itself was substantial.
Yeah, I understand. So, Fnatic Cop, do you want to say something before I go into the next thing?
I was saying, remember when you said that Nestorius believed in the union being hypostatic? For Nestorius, hypostasis, he says that there are two hypostases after the union, right? But he believed hypostasis to be natures, right? He believed in one prosopon to prosoponic union, right, between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not really different from the Chalcedonians in that sense, right? Because what he meant by hypostasis is nature, right? And he did believe, So just as a
so
reminder,
great. You affirm the product of a union is like a set of names. So
if we're like, metaphysically speaking, sure, but strictly the union itself.
That's Nestorianism, right? The agent, that would be Nestorianism.
Yeah. But there's no issue. I can't just say you're Nestorian, haha, move on, because the Catholic position does show mercy to him. So I want to go back to this indexical issue, because now we affirm the union is really where the communication of idioms happens. It's really just a set of names. Going back to the human propositional indexical saying, I am the Son of Man by nature and not the Son of God by nature, referring to its own ontology.
Wait, when you say I, like what, like whenever you like make like such, like whenever, if you were to make such proposition, like what's like the I, like going to be
the referent would be the Son of Man. So Aquinas, even he has no issue calling the humanity Son of Man.
He can make that proposition. That will be true. Yeah, because like if like that's just like in nature, if that's just like in reference to his nature, insofar as his like supposit, we would like concede.
But I'm talking about like the human nature itself making that proposition. Obviously, it can say, "I am the Son of God by relation." Of course.
What do you mean, like the human nature by itself?
What does that mean? The humanity that's like what Aquinas would call the flesh in atomo. What has this discursive reasoning?
Yeah, so you're just like talking about like the nature itself.
Yeah, not just any mere nature. I'm referring specifically to this nature taken individually. So an actual human individual. You affirmed it had discursive reasoning. So now I'm applying the indexicals to it. When it's referring to its own ontology, can it say, I am the Son of Man by nature and not the Son of God by nature?
Well, you can't like really like say the individual nature with like excluding like the person itself, firstly.
But again, the person is just a collection of names. The person is a collection of names. When it comes to actually what's individual, it's the two natures.
A person is not like a mere like collection of names. I don't know like where you got that from.
Because you have the two elements here as the word and the flesh. So obviously you have the divine supposit being the divine part, and then the human nature, and obviously I'm using part analogically, and the human nature being the human part. So the one person being resulted, it's just simply the two elements, the two things that are in union. So in Aquinas' position, the product of the union is called a person, but it's not actually a substantial person. It's not one substance. It's merely a collection of names. So of course I can say, fine, the collection of names according to the humanity is talking. I can grant that. But do you still see how you would have two natural sons, but one relational son?
And can I say something, Agen? I want to ask you a question. And so Aquinas, you would say, Agen believes in two sons that share names, the same names, properties, collection of properties, right?
Exactly. So he's one son.
What did you just say?
Sorry, 1 second, Joshy. 1 second.
He believed in two sons.
1 second, Joshy. 1 second, Joshy. Sorry for interrupting. But also to continue with this, Agen, if he believes in two substances, isn't a person just a substance? And so wouldn't that be two persons in a way? Because a person is just a rational substance and individual concrete reality. Yeah, go ahead.
This gets a bit complicated because now we have to be equivocal in the words. Person, it literally just means a set of names. And hypostatic
is that from the Boethius definition?
No, Boethius' definition is
read like, for example, like the sentences by Peter Lombard, right?
It's an individual substance of rational nature.
I don't see where you say, say that a person is just like a collection of names. Like person isn't like something merely like between nominal things. I don't
that was according to Aquinas, right? That he was saying that's according to Aquinas. It's right, the agent that it's a collection of names. But it has to.
That's not how Aquinas defines person, though.
Yeah, a person, according to Aquinas, definitionally is just a person of a substance of rational nature. I'm not critiquing that. I'm speaking specifically about the person being resulted from the union, the one Christ, according to Aquinas. You obviously would reject its one substance. It's a collection of names. So now the conclusion here is you have a natural Son of Man, a natural Son of God, and then their one subsistence, which is one natural Son. Or one relational son or one prosopic son. So would you affirm two natural sons and one prosopic son?
No, I will not, because once again, when you say substance, is that like in the Aristotelian sense?
Primary substance.
Primary substance.
If you are cursing at Christ,
also,
if you are saying he has two natures, what does that mean?
One sec.
Conversation between Agen and Joshy here. Go ahead, guys.
So, as we were saying, I'm referring to the primary substance of the flesh, and then analogically speaking here, quote unquote, the primary substance of the word.
The primary substance of the flesh? What are you talking about? Where does Aquinas ever like say like the individual, like the humanity itself is like primary substance?
Well, he says it's in atomo, it's an individual, or rather an instantiation.
But that doesn't mean primary substance.
Primary substance, I'm just taking it as a very blank definition.
Would you say primary substance would be in like regards to the person?
No. I believe you can have primary substances that aren't persons.
Okay.
So the flesh, I'm not trying to argue you guys believe the flesh has its own person. I'm not saying you guys believe in two persons. I'm just trying to, because Aquinas, for example, says the knowledge of the Trinity belongs to the Trinity and the Son of Man. So he sort of enumerates Son of Man with Son of God. So what I'm trying to show is the Word of God is Son of God by nature, and the humanity is Son of Man by nature, and the one subsistence which results is one Son. So there's a sense where you say one Son, but could you also say there's two sons qua their own ontology, so two natural sons, one natural Son of Man, one natural Son of God?
No, because son in of itself taken by like the definition of like Aquinas in regards to like generation, like that's just like going to be proper to like the person and like not to the divine essence.
Not always. I mean, like any of the human names, like for example, Jesus Christ. Obviously, you're going to give that to the person, but it's still proper to the human nature. You see how that works? It's not like Jesus Christ was named like before the incarnation. It's proper to the humanity. So I'm not arguing you guys don't have one person. You of course have one person. You predicate the titles onto the one person ultimately. I have no issue with that. My problem is like referring to where these names get their origins. So obviously, as you said, Son has to do with generation. You would believe the humanity has its generation, thus it's called Son of Man. The divinity has its generation, quote unquote, thus it's called Son of God. And the two together are one Son in the one person.
Yeah, and can I just add something, Agen? Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
One sec. Because one sec, Fanatic Cop, because I want to see what Josh has to say.
No, there's not going to be like two natural sons.
You wouldn't believe in any sense at all that there's a Son of Man enumerated with the Son of God?
Yeah, it's going to be proper to like the human nature, but like also like to the supposits.
Of course, I'm granting.
Like, I'm not like making like, or like the Thomas isn't like making two like distinct sons or something like that, because once again, when it comes to like the communication of idioms, right, we could like attributes like predicates to.
I agree. It's to the one supposit.
So it will still remain singular. Like the Son will remain singular. So you could say, "I am the Son of God. I am the Son of Man."
Of course, like, you have one. You have one Son when speaking of the supposit, but here I'm speaking primarily to like the origins of the natures. Obviously, the Son of Man is a title.
Can you elaborate further on that?
Yeah. The Son of Man is a title predicated to the human nature. It ultimately gets predicated to the divine suppositum. Of course, you can say that. There's a sense where you have one Son as a result of the union. But I'm speaking of the things that were united. The Son of Man has a certain set of idioms, and the Son of God has a certain set of idioms. So is there a sense where you could speak of one Son of Man and one Son of God uniting?
Well, if you just like take those two, like, in substitution for their nature, sure.
Perfect. So then could you say, in a specific sense, granting all of the qualifiers we just granted, there's two sons predicated to the two natures that are united into one Son?
No, you can't say that, because like Son is like in reference, so yeah, like sure, like it's like going to be in regards to the nature itself, but
so there'd be two sons united. I know. In the union itself, there's one Son. You can say that. But in the things that united, because obviously Son of Man is predicated to the human nature, and Son of God is predicated to the divine nature.
Is it predicated to the subject as well?
Yes. So the one person resulting.
Yeah, and so like that will not result in two sons, but simply
Yeah,
one.
I'm not saying the product of the Prosoponis two sons. I'm saying referring to the natures themselves. They are two sons that unite and then share their idioms, so that there's one son.
No, that's like the Arab Nestorius.
But I know that that's what I'm trying
No,
to show.
you're like trying to like make me concede to Nestorianism, but I'm like immediately like denying that position because once again, when it comes to like son, even though like that's in consequence to the nature itself, it's still proper to the supposits.
Even if it's proper to the supposit, the fact that you admit it's also proper to the nature means that there's two natures uniting that both have their idiom son of God and son of man. So obviously that's Nestorius' position. That's what he actually believed. Metaphysically speaking, what you've told me so far, and we don't have to use the word Nestorius. If it's better, I'll use the word Theodorian. This is what Theodore of Mopsuestia taught. That was his union of two sons. And like you, they rejected two sons. They said because there's one prosopon and a communication of idioms, the product of the union ultimately is one son. I'll let you say that. It's just, I'm speaking of the things themselves that united. Of course, you say there's one son as a result of a union. But how do you not say two sons when it comes to things united? Like, there's no issue with you saying that so far. Granted,
No,
what you affirm.
actually, there is an issue because Saint Cyril condemned that.
Obviously, but he also condemned two natures.
Yeah, he condemned two persons.
The
But
same
anyways,
reasons
He
Agen is
said two
saying, right?
natures.
Yeah.
but
For the same
anyways,
reasons, yeah.
when it comes to like that position, like clearly, like that's like not the Tomistic position because, firstly, in the mode of the union, like it's a place within the person itself, not within the individual natures.
Okay,
And
how
so,
about this?
given the properties, it's still going to remain singular, right? As long as it's like not in abstract name because those aren't like used interchangeably.
Aquinas cites Isidore of Seville, and he says the knowledge of the Trinity of the Father, Son, and Spirit, so the Trinity, belongs to the Trinity and to the Son of Man. So you see how he counts Son of Man with Trinity?
Yeah, because that's just like going to be a qualifier to add his human nature, which is really distinct
Exactly.
from his divine
Bingo.
nature.
So you see how the human nature is being called
If
Son
you were
of
to
Man?
say otherwise, right? If you were to say otherwise, then you're like and if you weren't to make a distinction between the divinity and the humanity, that would mean like the Father has humanity, which is why he like makes that clear
understand.
qualifier.
I understand. But you see what he did to make that qualifier. He called the human nature Son of Man. So I'm just asking you to do the same thing. Can you say that there's the Son of God by nature, the Son of Man by nature, who form one prosopon and one Son? The one supposit is one Son,
What do you mean form?
who sort of unite to make the product. The
So
one
are you just
Christ.
like asking within the mode of the union, are there two natures? Because like whenever you like use those like titles, like they're going to be in reference or in substitution to the distinct natures. And so if you mean it like that, I like would concede, but I don't mean it in the sense to which like you could say like they're different individually insofar as like being in like a different mode,
Yeah.
not in relation to the person.
They're not in different modes in relation to the person. I agree. They together are one person, but when you count the two natures with their two names that they have by nature,
Mhm.
just like Aquinas does with Son of Man and human nature, you could thus say there's, metaphysically speaking, a Son of God and a Son of Man who are one Son together.
Like it really once again it like really depends on how you interpret that because like we won't like say two
I'm not
natural.
trying to do gotcha. I'm not trying to do like a gotcha, like haha,
Yeah, I
you believe
understand
two
that.
persons. I'm just like trying to be as consistent as possible. If you can call the human nature Son of Man and say he's counted with the Trinity, and you can also say that the human nature has that by nature, and the divine nature is called Son of God by nature, you have two sons that are one Son together.
I don't see how that follows.
Because you can count the human nature by the name Son of Man. You agree to that.
But that's but that's in relation to also the person, not the individual nature itself.
I agree. But how about I cite Leo? Because Leo explains the communication of idioms. Basically, he says, the glory which is shared by both, its source is one, and the degradation which is shared by both, its source is another. So what he's saying is the degradation is predicated to the human nature. So the human nature has it by relation and source, and the divine nature has that by relation. And then he says the glory which is shared by both, its origin is the divine nature, but it's also shared with the human nature. So you see how, in a sense, he has one applies. It said replace the
You
words
cut out
glory
a
and
bit.
degradation.
You cut out a bit. Can you like say what you said for like maybe like 7 seconds ago?
Right. So Leo's case, there's one which is the origin of glory, and there is one which is the origin of degradation. So he says the one which is the origin of glory is shared by both, and the source of the degradation is also shared by both. So you see, in one sense, he has one glory and one degradation, and then in another sense, the mode of the one supposit, there is one degradation and glory together. You see how he's counting there?
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
So the same applies. You have the origin of the title Son of Man, which is predicated to the human nature, but it's also shared with the divine nature. And then you have the origin of the title Son of God. Its origin is the divine nature, but it's also shared with the human nature. Could you then say there is one Son of God, one Son of Man, and together those two titles are communicated?
Communicated, yes, but you cannot say there's two. The claim of two sons is incompatible with the Tomaleo. So I'm telling you that when it comes to like these
it's
terms,
compatible.
Huh?
It is compatible. Leo says it is not part of the same nature to say I and the Father are one, and to say the Father is greater than I. So he applies two relations to the Father that necessitates two relations of sonship.
Or just really two distinguished natures. But once it comes to like terms like this, right, making a distinction between abstract and concrete terms, like when it comes to like the term son of man, that is in regards to his human nature, but it's predicated upon the subject, which is singular.
I granted it. Of course, it's predicated to the one suppositum. I'll let you say that. I'm not saying you have two supposits that are two sons. I'm saying when it comes to the origin of these names, the origin of Son of Man is predicated to human nature, and Aquinas calls the human nature Son of Man.
When you predicate something of the human nature, is it predicated of the subject?
Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah, and so like that meaning is like going to be in reference to the singular subject, right?
Perfect. Yeah, but I'm speaking primarily of the two natures and the origins of those names, because you can still apply them to the natures, and then you can also apply them to the person.
Also, yeah, maybe I can clarify to Joshy. I understand what you're saying, Agen. Joshy, he wants to say that you can apply the Son of Man to the nature or to the supposit, right? But and so in one sense you have one person, but in another sense you have two natural sons, right? Because the origin of the application of the name is to the nature, which through communication of idioms can also be communicated to each other, right? Through the supposit, right? That's what you're trying to say, Agen, right?
Yes, bingo.
But the terms
I want to say something though, Josh. There are two problems with that, right? With Aquinas. Well, first of all, if there are two substances, I make the argument, right? And maybe you can say Agen's not a good argument. I make the argument if there are two substances, it's impossible for you to have a communication of idioms. That's for one. For there to be a communication of idioms, there needs to be one substance. One substance can possess multiple different sets of properties, but you cannot have one set of properties that's shared by multiple distinct substances. The problem with that is...
You define substance for me.
Wait, hold on.
It's a concrete But Agen, another problem is if you and then I'm going to leave you, right? I just wanted to share this.
No, you're fine to talk. It's just like
we don't
you're making like valid arguments. Exactly.
Yeah. But also another thing is if there are two substances, as what Aquinas affirmed and Joshy seems to affirm, right? And these are two rational substances, then according to Aquinas' own definition of a person being a rational substance, you have two persons. But maybe, we don't want to stray away that much.
Let's not stray into that.
Yeah, go ahead.
They're valid arguments. We can raise them another time. But I don't want that to be the discussion right now. But they're valid. I see where you're coming from. But do you see how he kind of clarified?
Yeah, go ahead, continue with Josh.
You see how he clarified what I'm trying to say? How you count two sons when it comes to the application to the natures? That's all I'm trying to say. It's like speaking of the man Jesus Christ and God the Word, because Aquinas does do that. So I'm just saying, do the same thing, but insert the name Son of Man and Son of God.
No, because St. Thomas would have never said that, because when it comes to these terms, like I'm telling you, like this is like not how like when it like Chalcedonian Christology works. I'm telling you that
he automatically does it. He says that the Trinity, the knowledge of the Trinity belongs to the Trinity and the assumed man. So he automatically does that.
He's not saying there's two sons in there.
But
in
obviously, he's
that
not
quote.
saying 2 sons. But you see, the principle
No,
applies.
but no, you're saying, right, that he did, or he would have at least accepted two natural sons. But that quote does not like show anything. He's just like saying he's making a distinction between the divinity and the humanity, and that.
But perfect. You see how he made that distinction? If you're consistent, let me put it this way. The fact that he names the human nature by Son of Man, and then also enumerates the person of the Word also in that statement. The reason he can do that is because he's applying the origin of that name to the nature which it comes from. All I'm telling you is if you apply that same logic, there would be 2 sons, 2 natural sons. Not that your union ultimately results in 2 persons and 2 sons, but that when you refer to the natures and the origins of their names, you can say Son of Man and Son of God.
What would be the syllogism for that?
You want me to like make a syllogism right now? Like I'm on my phone, but
yeah, no,
it's
like
basically
because like I just don't see how it follows because like no like Chalcedonian Christian at the least adheres like strictly to like like the hypostatic
a
union.
lot of
is
your
going to
fathers do say 2 sons.
natural sons just
A
because the
lot of your
natures
fathers say
overseen.
that. A lot of your fathers say that. It's not something unique. It's just the only
Wait,
reason
what? Who says that?
I'll show you. But the only reason Aquinas doesn't say it is obviously because of the confusion that it would be 2 prosopon. I'm not trying to argue that. I'm just obviously it's like a controversial term, but metaphysically speaking, you would have to affirm it. But here, let me show you your father saying this.
Okay. By the way, whom?
I think it's from Ildefonsus. 1 sec.
Alphonsus?
Yes.
Of Liguori?
Yeah.
Okay, show me where.
1 sec. Oh, sorry. It's Peter Christologus. So he was alive even during Chalcedonian times. He was even, he wrote to, one of his letters are in Chalcedon cited. So
Okay.
he's technically a Chalcedonian father. Here's what he says in Sermon 5. Since the time when Christ took upon himself the burden of our flesh, and being God, clothed himself with human vesture, God with truth calls himself man. The Lord truly calls himself the father of 2 sons, because the deity mixed into the humanity, as also the human tenderness joined to the deity has mingled man and God,
Wait.
and united to the
say
Lord.
what he just said? Like a sentence ago?
Yeah, he said the Lord truly calls himself the father of 2 sons, because the deity mixed in the humanity.
The deity mixed in the humanity. Was this like confirmed at like the Council of Chalcedon?
This specific sermon, no, but he's reckoned as a
I shouldn't like then like I don't think like because like it really depends, as I previously said, like 2 sons in substitution to 2 natures, sure, but not 2 natural sons.
Point.
Insofar as the consequence of the natures or it's terminating in the person.
Of course, that's all I've been trying to get you to say. 2 sons in regards to the 2 natures. That's it.
2 sons in regards to the 2 natures.
So as you just said, yeah,
it's like in complete substitution to like the natures, and I have like no problem admitting that. And I said like maybe 10 minutes ago, if that's what you mean, I concede. But I don't mean it in the sense to which it's terminated in the person, that the person is divided into 2 sons.
Exactly. I'm not saying it's terminated into 2 sons. As you just said, like the concession you made, that in the 2 natures would be 2 sons. So I guess we're in agreement there. That's literally just the crux of my argument. I'm not like trying to do a gotcha. That's really just the discussion.
I'm just like trying to understand the arguments, because that sermon you quoted, it literally says the divinity mixed in with the humanity, and that's literally like means union. Blatant heresy.
No. Everybody says mixed. Even Chalcedonians say mixed. Saint Gregory of Nyssa says mixed. Tertullian says mixed. Cyprian says mixed. Leo says mixed. Everybody says mixed.
So mixed in, but no. So if you read that sermon, the context is actually like not in like regards to what, at least like what Saint Gregory of Nazianzus would say, right? Because like within at least like the Cappadocians, to which I would understand them to like say mixed as like not in regards to like actually them being like compounded or like mixed into like one nature or composed of one nature, but like
you can use mixed in that way.
To the natures being one in union.
Yeah, that's all Peter Christologus is saying. I'm not saying mixed in like a monophysite way. It just means union. It's a special word for union. So
yeah, I mean, if that's like what you mean, sure. But like, okay, yeah, it's whatever.
That's all I had to really talk about. It was a good discussion. That's really all I had to say. It's 3 a.m. for me, and I'm probably gonna hop off. But it was good talking to you. I think we built some good grounds, and we can talk later on. Because I appreciated that discussion. You remained intellectually honest the whole time.
Yeah, thank you. God bless you.
Yeah, God bless you, man.